Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable our rectors, Ms. Saidah, and my beloved friends, X7D. Today, we are from group 11. Want to explain our presentation about the romantic age. Let me introduce our team. There is Nabila Luthfiani, Sasti Maulida, and me, Riza Habibah. The first, I will explain about the history of romantic age. The romantic period began roughly around 1798 and lasts until 1837. The political and economic atmosphere at the time heavily influenced this period, with many writers finding inspiration from the French Revolution. There was a lot of social change during this period. The start of Romanticism. Robert Burns is considered the pioneer of the Romantic movement, although his death in 1796 precedes what many consider the start of Romantics. His lyrics ancestally mark him as an early Romantic writer. His most notable works are Auld Lang Syne in 1788 and Tam O' Shanter in 1791. Burns inspired many of the writers during the Romantic period. William Blake was one of the earliest Romantic period writers. Blake believed in spiritual and political freedom and often wrote about these themes in his works. Although some of his poetry was published before the official start to the era, Blake can be seen as one of the founders of his movement. His work Songs of Innocence in 1789 and Songs of Experience 1794 are two of his most significant. This collection of poetry are some of the first romanticized children, and in this work, Blake pits the innocence and imagination of childhood against the harsh corruption of the adulthood. Especially within the city of London, he was also known for his beautiful drawings, which accompanied each of these poems. B. Romantic poetry. Solar says that the Romantic period began with the publishing of vertical ballads in 1798 by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. This was one of the first collection of poems and straight from the more formal poetic diction of the neoclassical period. Poets of the period instead used everyday words that the average person could understand. This also aided in expressing human emotion. Wordsworth primarily wrote about nature. He felt it could provide a sort of mental cleanliness and spiritual understanding. One of Wordsworth's well-known works in the Solitary River in 1887. This poem praises the beauty of music and shows the outpouring of expression and emotion that Wordsworth felt was necessary in poetry. His greatest place in the Prelude, 1890, a semi-autobiographical conversation poem, then the chronicles Wordsworth's entire life. Conversational poetry was the literary genre most commonly used by Wordsworth and Coleridge, with the latter writing a series of 8 poems following the genre structure of conversational verse and examining higher ideas of nature, man, and morality. This poetry is written in blank verse and extremely personal and intimate in nature, which must have the content based on the author's life. The next slide will be explained with our sister or our friends, Nabila Luthfiani. Time is yours.
Okay, there is two generation of putri. The first one is the first generation of romantic putri, and then the second one is generation of romantic putri. The romantic writers. Lord Byron differed from the writing style of Keats and Shelley. He was heavily influenced by the satire and wit from the previous period and infused this in his poetry. His satire, Don Juan, 1819 until 1824, is told in 17 cantos, divisions of long poems, and is based on the traditional legend of Don Juan. Byron changed the original telling of the story and instead of creating a womanizing character, he makes Don Juan someone easily seduced by women. The cantos follow his character's journey as he traveled throughout Europe, meeting several women and continually trying to escape from trouble. Byron's other notable work is Child Hero Pilgrimage, 1812 until 1816. Another length narrative poem. This poem was largely biographical and discussed many of Byron's personal troubles. It described the reflection of a young man who is seeking new beginnings for foreign countries after experience many years of war. This poem is significant because it introduced the Byronic hero, typically a handsome and intelligent man with a tendency to be moody, cynical, and rebellious against social norms.
Now,
Okay,
Miss
the
Sasti
next is
will
Sasti.
explain about
Time is
romantic age
yours.
prose. One thing which is basic about the romantic prose, and it is same about romantic literature in general, is that it is innovative, it is individualistic, intuitive, it is imaginative. All those factors mark a sharp difference from the classical or neoclassical poetry or writing in general. Neoclassical poetry and prose was socially bound. It was politically bound. It was determined by rules and conventions. There were rules laid down of every genre. It may be poem, it may be drama, it may be novel or criticism, and the like. There you could not transgress the rule, you had to write within the established rules and conventions. You had to move and write within the rules. In other words, you had to move within the bounds of rules. On the contrary, in the Romantic age, there is total individuality. Each individual has his or her freedom to respond to the poem or any other literary writing in accordance with his or her own best understanding. So, there is this element of individuality, not to poets, not to prose writers, and not to critics in this age are like. They may be similar, but they are not alike because they follow their own instincts, they follow their own philosophy, they follow their own understanding of what literature is. So, this is the basic characteristic of feature of romantic literature in general and romantic prose in particular. Now, so far as the major practitioners of romantic prose are concerned, there are many writers who almost every writer of worth the name during these years wrote one thing or the other and are all very important in their respective ways. In this book, we shall focus on the major prose writers during this period. And Mary Lamb. To begin with, one of the names that come to my mind is Charles Lamb. One good thing about Charles Lamb is that he did not publish anything under his own name alone, for it was always Charles and Mary Lamb, his sister. So they published together, they did it together, they always would divide or other works between themselves and do it. Therefore, there are similarities of style between the two, the intent and purposes being the same, the interest being the same, since there are many similarities between the two of them, brother and sister. They are always mentioned together. The two siblings, Mary Lamb and Charles Lamb, were born in around 1775 and died in 1834. Therefore, between these years we have a brother and sister writing very engaging, artistic, and interesting pieces of literature. One of the most seminal works of the Romantic period of the Romantic prose, to be precise, is the work known as Essays of Elia, published in 1823. These essays became so popular among the people that the collection earned Charles Lamb the title of Prince of English Essays. These essays were originally contributed to London Magazine. Later, they were published as a separate book. These essays have become so popular and important that whenever we have a course in English prose, we will always have the essays of Elia prescribed. These essays have earned Charles Lamb an international critical acclaim. When we study and go through the essays of Elia, there we come across two characters, namely Bridget and Elia. Charles Lamb, since it is siblings of Charles Lamb who have been made the character in the essays. Therefore, the pseudonyms are used as Bridget Elia and James Elia. Hospital 5 and 30 years ago. In his collection of essays, Essays of Elia, there are many memorable essays, but some are very popular. They are generally prescribed in B.A. Honoris and other syllabi, and they are liked by most readers. Two Races of Men, Charles Lamb, as has already been mentioned, has composed many essays. However, the essays that I would be dealing with now is a very popular piece of literature. The title of the essays is Two Races of Men. Two Races of Men, when we compare it with the essay that has already been discussed, it comparatively is a shorter essay. It is very humorous because in this particular essay, Charles Lamb states that there are only two races of men. One is the lender and the other is the borrower. Since there are people who borrow things from other people and there are people who lend things, particularly money, to other people. He argued that there are only two classes of races of men. The human species, according to the best theory I can form of it, is composed of two distinct races, the men who borrow and the men who lend. These two original diversities may be reduced all those impertinent classification of Gothic and Celtic tribes, white men, black men, and red men. Thank you. Alhamdulillah, we have done our presentation. I hope you will understand what we say, what we explain. Thank you very much for your attention, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.